Hey everybody, welcome to this video, and today I am going to be talking to you about the conflict between legal and compliance. And I think this is a very important subject matter. I get a lot of questions about, I see roles that combine legal and compliance. What is this about? So I'm hoping to shed some light for you around that, and it can inform your decision making going forward about the type of roles that you go for, what you need to be looking out for, and yeah, just making good decisions. Even if you are in a role right now that combines legal and compliance, what you just need to be thinking about to manage the conflict that can give rise to. But before I jump into that, thank you so much for your subscriptions, for your comments in the chat section. I really do enjoy coming back and responding and answering your questions that you ask after these videos are recorded, and really just engaging. Make sure you keep an eye on the community page as well. I post a bunch of stuff that's coming up, like the upcoming compliance practices workshop, my workshop that is taking place on the 23rd of October. It's a fully virtual workshop, one-day workshop, where I take you through compliance risk assessment, and the monitoring and testing within compliance, and help you to get to grips and understand those two principles and technical skills a lot better. So visit the website to make sure you're signing up and registering all the information you need about the compliance practices workshop, which is my final workshop for 2024. So don't miss it. It's on the website. Okay. All right, jumping straight in. Conflict of interest between legal and compliance. And I've written down some notes because I really want to make sure that I cover everything. So don't be alarmed if you see me reading. Like I said earlier on, there are a lot of job ads that you'll see: legal and compliance manager, legal and compliance specialist. And sometimes this has given rise to the understanding or the expectation, misconception, whatever word you want to use, that in order for you to do compliance, you need to have a law degree. I've addressed this in many platforms here and LinkedIn, wherever you've seen it, but somewhere you must have seen me address this. And I always say you don't need a law degree to be a compliance officer. But the reason there is that confusion is that there's so many sort of like links and similarities between the roles that a lot of people start to have the tendency that it's kind of interchangeable, it's all one thing. So this video is about clarifying that. I've done a previous video, and I'll make sure I include the link, that talks to the fact that legal risk is different from compliance risk. So if you haven't watched that video, I recommend you pause, go back to that video, watch that video first, and then join me, because that distinction between the two risks is really going to help you understand why there is a conflict of interest when those two roles get combined in certain instances. So it's when we look at like the 3 lines model, you'll see that there's 3 lines. It used to be called the 3 lines of defense, something I've also referenced in historical videos. You'll see that the idea between the 3 lines is to make sure that you have a separation and independence between certain types of functions. And the function that legal performs is one of supporting the business, but also being an advocate for the business and looking out for the best interests of the business. So when you talk about their contracts that they look out for, defending the intellectual property rights of an organization, labor law disputes, arbitration, those type of things, your lawyers, your general counsel is going to focus on that area. Their job is to protect the business at all costs. That's why there's things such as legal privilege, right? Where your general counsel can be sort of confessed to, for lack of a better term, by business units, and they're supposed to say, how can we make sure that we don't get into trouble? That's why a lot of things are couched in that legal privilege situation or principle. So they have a very specific role. And why there's confusion between legal and compliance sometimes is because the compliance officer, yes, deals with laws and regulations, but we are more an independent function that has to say, okay, business, we are occupying a role of more oversight, advising you on how to comply with what you need to do. But we also have a responsibility to, in the event that the business is operating not in compliance, in non-compliance to the various laws, to actually report that to the relevant authority. So we can't say, oh, okay, as lawyers, they're looking after the interests of the organization and are trying to make sure that the organization doesn't get in trouble. Compliance officers, we may have an obligation to actually report on the very businesses that we sit in if they are violating laws. And that is where that conflict then comes into. How do you have a hat where, as a legal counsel, you are supposed to be the advocate of and protecting the interests of the business, and then as compliance officer, you're supposed to say, yes, I'm helping you work in compliance with the requirements and laws and regulations that apply to the business. But in the event that you fail to do so, and I have to complete a compliance report about the business activities that goes to the regulator, I have to disclose that. And on this hand, now I've got a legal hat that says legal privilege, and I'm not supposed to disclose. So already that kind of gives you a clear picture of where the lines can be blurred, where one person sits with both the hat of business advocate and protector from a legal counsel perspective, but also compliance officer, have to maintain the ethical standards, have to report non-compliance to regulatory authorities. It becomes very difficult. And I know there's structures that can be put in place to manage conflicts of interests, but the fact of the matter is we are human beings. We can put all these things in place, but one person sitting with two responsibilities, essentially, and two people to whom they're responsible to, makes it a challenging thing. At what point are they wearing which hat? Do they know specifically which hat they need to be wearing at what time? How does someone do a monitoring and testing exercise and report the results of that if that could put the business in trouble? Are they going to take off their compliance hat and then put on their legal hat and say, oh, legal privilege applies to this? So it can create very difficult circumstances. Even when we look at the reporting line, it's been said that best practice is for compliance to report directly to a CEO or to the board and not to legal, because of that conflict of interest that can result in. So ideally, you would have your general counsel sitting at a certain level in your organization and your compliance officer sitting at the same level in the organization. They can both report into the CEO, but they are separate functions and entities, and you don't have legal reporting into compliance or compliance reporting into legal because of that conflict of interest situation. So when you do see a job ad that says, head of legal and compliance, just keep in mind that there is that conflict and figure out how you as an individual intend to manage that conflict and ensure that it's not affecting your ability to be effective in one or the other. Make sure that as you're having conversations with the hiring manager, whether it's the CEO or whatever, that you articulate that, listen, I'm concerned that head of legal and compliance roles create a conflict. Has this been approved by the board, and all of that, and make sure that those conversations are had up front and that the board is also very well aware of the potential conflicts that combining those situations, those roles can give rise to, and signs off on and puts in place the appropriate measures, whatever that can be for the organization. But at the end of the day, the ideal situation is for legal to be separate and compliance to be separate. But obviously based on certain factors, operational factors, like a small entity may not be able to hire a separate legal and a separate compliance. So again, it's about managing that conflict of interest, but larger organizations really have no excuse for making sure that they have two separate functions, legal and compliance, and that those aren't overlapped. So an interesting thing that I found that I think clearly articulates this point is, and this is where I'm going to start reading to make sure I get the point right. The U.S. Office of the Inspector General in November 2023 published the General Compliance Program Guidelines. And in this document, they raised the concern about compliance officers' reporting lines and stated that the compliance officer, and this is in quote, should not lead or report to the entity's legal or finance functions and should not provide the entity with legal or financial advice or supervise anyone who does. The CEO, the compliance officer, should report directly to the CEO or the board. The Department of Justice goes on to say, the same report goes on to say that the Department of Justice in the US and the OIG has long maintained the view that legal counsel is an advocate for the organization, protecting its interests and not an independent gatherer of facts and evidence who voluntarily discloses violations of law and regulation to appropriate authority. And that would be the role of compliance. So best practice is for the chief compliance officer and the general counsel roles to be separated. So I hope that makes sense to you in terms of when you see those roles, is that something that you think is appropriate? Are you having the relevant conversations with depending on the level, obviously, your CEO and all of that in terms of, is this the right structure? These are the pros of having it this way. If it's a budgetary issue, it's a small organization, we can't have them separate for whatever reason. What measures are we putting in place to manage that conflict? Because at the end of the day, and I've had so many conversations in training and workshops with people who are reporting into legal, with people who are reporting into finance, and the conflict that puts in place for some people, the pressures that they are put under to change their reports because the report is making the business not look so good and could give rise to further regulatory scrutiny. That is a problem. So do make sure that you clearly understand the pros and cons of having a combined legal and compliance functions, making sure you're well-versed to be able to defend it if that's something that someone is trying to do. I'm not even going to go into when you start talking about first-line people like heads of sales, heads of products, also somehow ending up wearing a compliance hat. That is just like a disaster of a conflict of interest. But we're focusing today on legal and compliance roles. So I hope this video has kind of explained to you. I know it's a question I've gotten in the chats, in the comment section at some point as well. So I hope this video has helped to clarify why legal and compliance should ideally, in an ideal world, wherever possible, be two separate functions, and compliance not report into legal, or legal report into compliance, or in some way have oversight. What can happen is that these two separate functions work together. So you have your compliance team, and they can rely on legal for assistance with things for interpreting the laws, better understanding the laws, and in that respect, work together. But from an accountability and reporting line perspective and the business structures, it's best that those two functions are kept apart. So I hope this video has been very helpful. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? We are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. I need to get better about recording more videos because I'm not doing myself any favors. But thank you so much for watching this video. Do pop your comments into the chat and your questions. I'll get back to them as soon as I possibly can, and look forward to sharing new videos with you soon. And remember, Compliance Practices Workshop, 23rd of October, 2024, one day, fully virtual. You can join from anywhere in the world. Visit the website for more information, and I look forward to seeing you there. Bye.